Hyunwoo had always thought himself a good judge of people. 3 months of living with Nari should have been enough time to figure out his roommate. But every day she surprised him in small, strange ways that made him question what he thought he knew about her. The dormitory room at Seoul National University was small, with 2 beds, 2 desks, and barely enough space for 2 people to move around without bumping into each other. Hyunwoo had been worried about getting a foreign roommate at first. His English was good enough for his engineering classes, but daily conversation was different. When he met Nari on move-in day, those worries seemed silly. She was tall, much taller than most Korean women, with pale skin that looked like she had never seen sunlight. Her hair was an unusual shade of light brown that seemed almost silver in certain lights. She spoke Korean perfectly, though with an accent he could not place. When he asked where she was from, she always said Northern Europe and changed the subject. The first strange thing Hyunwoo noticed was that Nari never seemed to eat. He had never seen her touch the instant noodles, rice, or snacks that filled their small shared refrigerator. Sometimes he would buy extra food and leave it on her desk, but it would sit there untouched for days until he threw it away. When he asked about it, she would smile and say she ate at different times or had already eaten somewhere else. The second thing was her sleep schedule. Hyunwoo was a night owl, often staying up until 2 or 3 in the morning working on assignments. But no matter how late he stayed up, Nari was always awake when he went to bed. And no matter how early he woke up, she was already awake, sitting at her desk reading or writing in a notebook with strange symbols that did not look like any language he knew. "Do you ever sleep?" he asked her one morning after finding her awake at 5 a.m. "Not much," she replied, not looking up from her notebook. "I do not need as much sleep as most people." Hyunwoo wondered if this was some kind of European thing he did not understand. Maybe people from her country were just different. But as weeks passed, he began to notice other odd behaviors that made him more curious. Nari had an unusual way of knowing things. She would mention that the student in room 304 was having trouble with his girlfriend. Before Hyunwoo heard any gossip about it, she would predict when the dormitory's hot water would stop working, or when the elevator would break down. When he asked how she knew these things, she would shrug and say she was good at noticing patterns. Electronics seemed to act strangely around her. Hyunwoo's laptop would freeze when she sat too close to his desk. The microwave would make odd beeping sounds when she walked by. His phone would sometimes show no signal bars when she was in the room, then return to full strength when she left. He started to wonder if she had some kind of medical device that interfered with electronics, but he was too polite to ask. The strangest thing was how she watched people. Nari would sit by their window for hours, looking down at the courtyard below where students walked between buildings. She carried a small notebook everywhere and would write in it while watching. Sometimes she would ask him odd questions about human behavior. "Why do people form groups with others who are similar to them?" she asked one evening while Hyunwoo was trying to study. "What do you mean?" he replied, looking up from his quantum physics textbook. "I observe that students with similar interests or from similar backgrounds tend to spend time together. But they also sometimes exclude others who are different. Why do humans do this?" The way she said human struck him as odd, but he assumed it was just her unusual way of speaking Korean. "I guess people like to be around others who understand them," he said. "It feels safer, maybe." She wrote something in her notebook. Safer from what? Hyunwoo had never thought about it that deeply. "I do not know. Maybe just safer from feeling alone or different." Nari nodded and wrote more notes. These conversations happened often, always with her asking questions about why people did certain things, as if she was studying human behavior for a research project. One evening in late October, something happened that made Hyunwoo seriously question what he thought he knew about his roommate. He was sitting at his desk, working on a particularly difficult engineering problem, when he felt the building shake slightly. It was just a small tremor, the kind that happens sometimes in Seoul. Earthquake sensors would probably not even register it. But 30 seconds before the shaking started, Nari had suddenly stood up from her bed and walked to the center of the room. She had closed her eyes and stood very still, as if listening to something Hyunwoo could not hear. "The building is under stress," she said quietly, just before the tremor began. When the small earthquake ended, Hyunwoo stared at her. "How did you know that was going to happen?" Nari looked uncomfortable, like she had said something she should not have. "I felt the building's stress patterns," she said finally. "That is not possible," Hyunwoo said. "Humans cannot feel earthquake stress patterns." Again, she had used the word humans in that strange way, and again he noticed it. "I am very sensitive to vibrations," she said quickly. "Some people are like that." But Hyunwoo had studied physics long enough to know that what she described was not possible for any human being. You would need scientific instruments to detect the tiny changes that happened before earthquakes. No person could feel them, no matter how sensitive they were. That night, as he lay in bed listening to Nari move quietly around the room in the darkness, Hyunwoo began to seriously consider that his roommate might not be who she claimed to be. Maybe she was involved in some kind of government research project. Maybe she was testing some new technology. Maybe she was not really a student at all. But as strange as these ideas seemed, they felt more believable than the alternative that was starting to form in the back of his mind. Because the alternative was that Nari might not be human at all. Hyunwoo pushed that thought away. It was too crazy to consider seriously. There had to be a normal explanation for everything he had observed.
He just had not figured it out yet. But deep down, as he finally fell asleep, he knew that something about his roommate was very, very wrong.
3 weeks after the earthquake incident, Hyunwoo decided he needed to find out the truth about Nari. Her strange behaviors were affecting his studies, and he could not concentrate while wondering what secret she was hiding. He made a plan to return to their room unexpectedly and see what she did when she thought she was alone. On a Tuesday evening in November, Hyunwoo told Nari he would be studying late at the library. He gathered his books and left the dormitory as usual. But instead of going to the library, he waited in the parking lot behind some trees where he could see their window. The light in their room stayed on, and he could see Nari moving around inside. After waiting an hour, he quietly returned to the building and climbed the stairs to their floor. He had practiced walking silently in the hallway many times as a child playing games with his younger brother Jin-ho. Now those skills would help him discover what Nari was really doing. Hyunwoo reached their door and carefully inserted his key. He turned it slowly, trying not to make any sound. The door opened just a crack, enough for him to see inside without being noticed. What he saw made him freeze in complete shock. Nari was standing in the middle of the room, but she was not alone. There was another person with her, a man who looked similar to Nari with the same pale skin and tall height. They were speaking in a language that sounded like music mixed with electronic sounds, but that was not. The shocking part was that the man had just stepped through the solid wall of their room, as if it was made of air. Hyunwoo watched in disbelief. As the stranger moved back toward the wall, instead of stopping when he reached it, he simply walked through it and disappeared. The wall looked completely normal, solid concrete and paint, but the man had passed through it like it did not exist. Nari turned toward the door, and Hyunwoo quickly pulled back. But it was too late. She had seen him. "Hyunwoo," she said in Korean, her voice different from how she usually spoke. "Please come inside. We need to talk." Hyunwoo's hands were shaking as he pushed the door open and stepped into the room. His mind was trying to process what he had just seen, but it was impossible. People could not walk through walls. It was against every law of physics he had ever learned. "What was that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Nari looked at him for a long moment. Her usual calm expression was gone, replaced by something that looked like sadness and worry. "That was Kale," she said. "He is like me. Like you how?" Hyunwoo asked, though he was starting to guess the answer and did not like where his thoughts were going. Nari walked to her bed and sat down heavily. "Hyunwoo, I need to tell you something that will be very difficult to believe. I am not from Northern Europe. I am not from Earth at all." The words hit Hyunwoo like a physical blow. "What do you mean?" "I am from a place you would call another dimension. My people are called the Valari. We can do things that humans cannot do, like changing our molecular structure to pass through solid matter." Hyunwoo sat down hard in his desk chair. "That is impossible. I know it seems impossible to you," Nari said gently. "But you just saw it happen." "There has to be some explanation," Hyunwoo said, though his voice was getting weaker. "Some kind of technology or trick or—" Nari stood up and walked toward the wall. "Would you like me to show you again?" Before Hyunwoo could answer, she stepped forward and her body passed through the solid concrete wall as if it was not there. A few seconds later, she stepped back through from the other side. Hyunwoo felt like he might throw up. Everything he thought he knew about reality was crumbling around him. How? He managed to ask. We can control how our atoms interact with other matter, Nari explained, sitting back down. It is something my people developed over many thousands of years. We can become solid or allow ourselves to pass through things at will. Why are you here? Hyunwoo asked. Why are you telling me this? Nari was quiet for a moment, looking down at her hands. My people are studying Earth. We have been watching humanity for some time, trying to understand your species and your potential. Studying us for what? To decide whether we should make contact with your people, or whether it would be too dangerous for both of our species. Hyunwoo felt a chill run down his spine. Dangerous how? Hyunwoo, your species is developing technology very quickly, much faster than most species do. Some of my people think humans might become a threat to other civilizations if you develop the ability to travel between dimensions. And what do you think? Hyunwoo asked. I think humans are remarkable, Nari said. And for the first time since he had known her, she smiled a genuine warm smile. You create and adapt and solve problems in ways that amaze me. That is why I volunteered to study your people more closely. Is that why you became my roommate? To study me? Nari looked embarrassed. Yes, at first. But you became my friend, Hyunwoo. That was not part of the plan. Hyunwoo stood up and began pacing around the small room. His mind was racing with questions and implications. Are there others like you here? Yes. There are Valari observers in major cities around your world. We work in small teams, living among humans and reporting back to our people. What kind of things do you report? How humans interact with each other. How you solve problems. How you react to stress and change. How you form relationships and communities. She paused. Your capacity for both cooperation and conflict. And based on what you learn, your people will decide whether to make contact? That was the plan, Nari said, but something in her voice suggested things had become more complicated. What do you mean that was the plan? Nari stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the campus below. There are other species watching Earth too, Hyunwoo. Not all of them are as peaceful as the Valari. What other species? There is a group called the Kajari Empire. They believe that any species developing dimensional travel technology should be stopped before they become too powerful. They think humans are developing too quickly and should be controlled before you become a threat. Hyunwoo felt his blood go cold. Controlled how? The Kajari prefer to eliminate developing civilizations entirely, rather than risk them becoming competitors. You mean they want to destroy Earth? They want to destroy humanity's ability to develop advanced technology. Whether that means destroying your civilization or just setting you back thousands of years, they do not much care which. Hyunwoo sank back into his chair. When? We believe they will arrive within 6 months, Nari said quietly. The room was silent for a long time. Hyunwoo tried to process everything he had just learned. Aliens were real. They had been studying humanity. Some of them wanted to destroy human civilization, and his strange roommate was actually an interdimensional scout. Why are you telling me this? He asked finally. Nari turned from the window to look at him. Because I have grown to care about humans. About you specifically, and because I think my people are wrong about something important. What? They think humans are dangerous because you develop technology so quickly. But I think that same quality that makes you seem dangerous could also make you humanity's greatest strength. I do not understand. Humans do not just adapt to new situations, Hyunwoo. You find creative solutions that no one else would think of. You take risks that other species would never consider. And when you are threatened, you do not give up. Nari walked back to her bed and picked up the notebook she was always writing in. I have been documenting human behavior for months. What I have learned is that underestimating humans is the biggest mistake anyone could make. She handed him the notebook. I want to show you something. Hyunwoo opened Nari's notebook with shaking hands. The pages were filled with observations about human behavior, but not the kind he had expected. Instead of cold scientific notes, he found detailed stories about acts of kindness, creative problem-solving, and humans helping each other in difficult situations. You wrote about Mrs. Park in the cafeteria helping that exchange student who could not speak Korean, he said, reading one of the entries, and about how students formed study groups to help each other pass difficult exams, even when they were competing for the same graduate programs, Nari added, and about how quickly humans adapted when the dormitory heating system failed last month. Hyunwoo continued reading. Page after page showed examples of human ingenuity, cooperation, and resilience. This is not what I expected from alien surveillance. That is exactly the problem, Nari said. My superiors expected me to document human aggression and dangerous technological development. Instead, I found something much more interesting. Before Hyunwoo could respond, the air in the room seemed to shimmer, and Kale stepped through the wall again. This time, Hyunwoo was watching carefully and could see how the man's body became translucent for a moment as he passed through the solid matter. Nari, Kyle said in Korean, though his accent was much stronger than hers. You were supposed to report to the ship an hour ago.
Why are you still here?
Kale looked at Hyunwoo and his expression became angry. Why is the human still conscious? You should have used the memory modifier. I decided not to, Nari said, standing between Kale and Hyunwoo. That was not your decision to make, Kale replied coldly. Our mission parameters are clear. Humans who discover our presence must have their memories adjusted. Our mission parameters were written by people who do not understand humans as well as I do, Nari said firmly. Kyle's eyes narrowed. You have become too attached to your subjects, Nari. This is exactly why long-term observation missions are dangerous. You have lost your objectivity. I have gained understanding, Nari shot back. There is a difference. Hyunwoo stood up slowly, trying not to make any sudden movements. What is a memory modifier? A device that can erase or change specific memories, Kale answered, pulling a small silver object from his pocket. Do not worry, human. You will not remember any of this conversation. You will go back to thinking Nari is just a strange exchange student. No, Nari said, moving closer to Hyunwoo. I will not let you do that. You do not have a choice, Kale said, activating the device. It began to glow with a soft blue light. But as Kale raised the memory modifier toward Hyunwoo, something unexpected happened. Hyunwoo's phone, which had been sitting on his desk, suddenly emitted a high-pitched electronic squeal. The sound was so loud and sharp that all three of them covered their ears. The memory modifier's light flickered and went out. What just happened? Kale demanded, looking at his device in confusion. Hyunwoo looked at his phone, then at the memory modifier, then back at his phone. An idea was forming in his mind based on something he had learned in his quantum physics classes. The frequency interference, he said, more to himself than to the others. What? Nari asked. Your device works on some kind of electromagnetic frequency, right? Hyunwoo asked Kale. And my phone has been acting strangely around Nari for months. What if human technology interferes with your technology in ways you did not expect? Kale tried to reactivate the memory modifier, but it would not work properly while Hyunwoo's phone was near. Interesting, Nari said thoughtfully. It is a malfunction, Kale said angrily. Nothing more. But Hyunwoo was already thinking ahead to the implications. What other human technology might interfere with alien technology? And what if that interference works both ways? You cannot seriously be considering, Kyle began. I am considering that maybe humans are not as helpless as your people think, Hyunwoo said. And maybe the reason we develop technology so quickly is the same reason we might be able to defend ourselves. Kel moved toward Hyunwoo again, but Nari stepped firmly in his way. Nari, move aside, Kale ordered. This human knows too much. If you will not modify his memory, then we must consider other options. What other options? Nari demanded. The Kajari solution, Kale said coldly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. You cannot be serious, Nari said. What is the Kajari solution? Hyunwoo asked, though he suspected he did not want to know the answer. Elimination of the problem, Kale said. If a human discovers our presence and cannot be safely contained, then for the security of both our species, that human must be removed. You mean killed, Hyunwoo said. I mean prevented from causing an interdimensional incident that could lead to war, Kyle replied. Nari's entire body tensed. Kyle, if you touch him, I will report your actions to the council myself. The council gave me authority over this mission when they became concerned about your emotional compromise, Kyle said. Your reports have been too sympathetic to the humans. They sent me to investigate whether you could still be trusted to complete your assignment objectively. And what have you concluded? Nari asked dangerously. That you have been corrupted by prolonged exposure to human emotional manipulation, Kale said. You no longer see them as subjects to be studied. You see them as friends. Because that is what they are, Nari said. Hyunwoo is my friend. And humans in general are not the threat you think they are. They develop technology at an unprecedented rate, Kale argued. They are aggressive, territorial, and prone to violence. They will be a danger to every peaceful species in this region of dimensional space. They are also creative, adaptable, and capable of incredible cooperation when faced with a common threat. Nari countered. They do not just survive challenges, Kyle. They overcome them in ways that no one expects. Hyunwoo listened to this argument with growing understanding. You are afraid of us, he said to Kyle. We are concerned about you, Kyle corrected. No, you are afraid, Hyunwoo repeated. You are afraid because humans do things differently than other species. We do not follow the same patterns you are used to. Kyle's expression became even colder. Fear is not the correct term. Then what is? Hyunwoo asked. Caution, Kale said, based on careful analysis of human behavior throughout your history. What analysis? Nari asked. You have been here for less than 1 day. I have been studying humans for months. I have access to historical records going back thousands of years, Kyle replied. Human conflict, human wars, human destruction of their own environment. The evidence is clear. The evidence is incomplete, Nari said. Yes, humans have conflicts, but they also have an incredible capacity for growth and change. They learn from their mistakes. Sometimes, Kale admitted, but not reliably. More reliably than most species, Nari argued. And much faster. Hyunwoo had been listening to this debate while thinking about the problem from an engineering perspective. What would it take to convince your people that humans are not a threat? He asked. Both Valari looked at him in surprise. I mean specifically, Hyunwoo continued. What evidence would change their minds? There is no evidence that could, Kale began. There might be, Nari said slowly. If humans could demonstrate that they can develop advanced technology responsibly, if they could show that they can cooperate across their entire species when necessary. That is impossible, Kale said. Humans cannot even agree on how to manage their own planet. We have not been given a reason to cooperate as a species, Hyunwoo pointed out. But if we knew that Earth was being threatened by an outside force, he looked at both of the aliens. How long do we have before the Khazari arrive? 2 weeks after learning the truth about Nari, Hyunwoo found himself in a situation he never could have imagined. He was sitting in a secret meeting room beneath Seoul National University, surrounded by some of the brightest minds in South Korea, discussing how to defend Earth from an alien invasion. Dr. Sojin Lee, a theoretical physicist in her 40s, was explaining quantum field theory to Captain Da-un Wang, a military strategist who had been quietly briefed about the alien situation by government officials who already knew about the Valari presence. Professor Jae-sung Park, Hyunwoo's quantum physics instructor, was frantically taking notes while Nari demonstrated her phasing ability for the 3rd time. The molecular manipulation is fascinating, Dr. Lee said, watching Nari's hand pass through the metal table. If we could understand the mechanism, we might be able to replicate it. Or more importantly, we might be able to defend against it, Captain Wang added. If these Khazari can phase through our walls and weapons, traditional military tactics will be useless. Hyunwoo looked around the room at the team he had helped assemble. After Kyle had reluctantly agreed to give humanity a chance to prove itself, Nari had contacted her superiors and requested permission to share limited technology and information with a small group of humans. The Valari Council had agreed, mostly because they were curious to see what humans would do with the knowledge. The quantum tunneling equations I have been working on for my thesis, Hyunwoo said. They are similar to what Nari describes about phasing. But humans approach the problem differently than the Valari do. How so? Professor Park asked. The Valari developed phasing through biological evolution over thousands of years, Hyunwoo explained. They learned to control their molecular structure naturally. But humans think about it as an engineering problem. Nari nodded. When I first saw Hyunwoo's research, I was surprised. He was trying to solve the same problem my ancestors solved, but using mathematics and technology instead of biology. And that gives us an advantage, Dr. Lee said, understanding immediately. We can build machines to do what they do naturally. More than that, Hyunwoo said excitedly. We can build machines to do things they cannot do naturally. Captain Wang leaned forward. Explain. Nari can phase herself through solid matter, but she cannot make other things phase. She cannot make a building phase or a vehicle or a weapon, but if we can build technology that replicates the effect, we could make entire cities phase out of normal space. Dr. Lee finished. The Kajari could not attack what they cannot reach. Professor Park looked up from his notes. But we only have 4 months before they arrive. Even if we understand the theory, building and implementing the technology in that time frame seems impossible. For most species, yes, Nari said. But humans do not work like most species, and what do you mean? Captain Wang asked. Other species develop technology carefully, testing each step thoroughly before moving to the next stage. It is safe and reliable, but slow. Nari smiled. Humans try impossible things and somehow make them work. Over the next 3 weeks, the team worked with an intensity that amazed even Nari. Hyunwoo barely slept, spending 18 hours a day in the laboratory trying to build a prototype phase generator. Dr. Lee worked with physicists around the world, sharing theoretical models and getting input from the global scientific community. Captain Wang coordinated with military leaders in other countries, quietly building an international defense network. But they were not the only ones working. Reports came in from around the world of similar teams forming in other countries. The Valari had shared information with small groups of humans in 12 major nations, and everywhere the response was the same: intense cooperation and rapid innovation. This is unprecedented, Nari told Hyunwoo one evening as they worked late in the laboratory. I have studied 17 different species as they developed advanced technology. None of them worked like this. Worked like what? Hyunwoo asked, not looking up from the complex device he was assembling. With this level of chaos, Nari said, searching for the right word. Most species follow careful development protocols. They plan extensively, then execute those plans methodically. But humans? She gestured at the laboratory around them, which looked like a hurricane had hit it. You try dozens of different approaches simultaneously. You test things before you fully understand them. You build on failures and turn mistakes into innovations. Hyunwoo paused in his work. Does that worry you? It terrifies the Valari Council, Nari admitted. But it also gives me hope. Why? Because the Kajari plan their attacks very carefully. They study their targets for years, develop precise strategies, and execute those strategies exactly as planned. They are very good at defeating enemies who fight predictably. Hyunwoo understood immediately, but they have never fought humans before. Exactly. The breakthrough came in the 4th week, not from the main research team but from Jin-ho, Hyunwoo's younger brother, who had insisted on helping, despite having no scientific training. Jin-ho had been working as a messenger, carrying materials between different research groups around Seoul, but he had also been listening to everything and asking questions that no one else thought to ask. Why does it have to be so complicated? Jin-ho asked one day when he found Hyunwoo struggling with a particularly difficult engineering problem. Because the physics is complicated, Hyunwoo said tiredly. But Nari makes it look easy when she does it. That is because she was born with the ability. Was she really born with it, though? Jin-ho asked. Or did her species learn it so long ago that it became natural? Hyunwoo stopped working and looked at his brother. What are you thinking? I am thinking that maybe humans do not need to build machines to copy what the Valari do, Jin-ho said. Maybe we can learn to do it ourselves. That is impossible, Dr. Lee said, overhearing the conversation. Humans do not have the biological capability. How do we know? Jin-ho asked. Has anyone tried? Nari, who had been quietly working at another table, suddenly looked up. Actually, she said slowly, there might be something to that idea. What do you mean? Hyunwoo asked. The ability to phase is not just biological for the Valari, Nari explained. It also requires mental discipline and understanding of how matter works at the quantum level. In theory, any species with sufficient intelligence and willpower could learn to do it. In theory, Dr. Lee said skeptically. There is only one way to find out, Jin-ho said with determination. 2 hours later, Jin-ho became the first human in history to successfully phase through solid matter. It only lasted for a few seconds, and he could only manage to phase his hand through a thin piece of metal. But it worked. How did you do it? Hyunwoo asked in amazement. I stopped thinking about it as impossible, Jin-ho said simply. Nari explained how she visualizes the process, and I just tried it. Dr. Lee immediately began taking measurements and asking questions. Within hours, she had developed a theory about how human consciousness could control quantum interactions under certain conditions. Within days, other members of the team were learning to phase as well. "This changes everything," Captain Wang said during their next strategy meeting. "If humans can learn to phase naturally, we do not need to build defensive technology. We can become defensive technology. It will take time to train enough people," Professor Park warned. "We still only have 6 weeks before the Kajari arrive," Dr. Lee added. "Then we had better get started," Hyunwoo said. Word spread quickly through the international network. Human governments began secretly training special forces teams in phasing techniques. Scientists worked to understand and improve the process. Military strategists developed new tactics that took advantage of humanity's growing phasing abilities. But most importantly, something unexpected was happening. As humans around the world learned about the threat to Earth and began working together to defend their planet, old conflicts and rivalries began to seem less important. Countries that had been enemies for decades started sharing technology and resources. Political differences were set aside in favor of species survival. "The Valari Council is amazed," Nari told Hyunwoo as they practiced phasing techniques together. "They have never seen anything like this. Humans are becoming more unified in weeks than most species achieve in centuries." "Are they still worried about us being a threat?" Hyunwoo asked. "They are starting to understand that humans might be something much more interesting than a threat," Nari said. "You might be the key to solving problems that have existed in interdimensional space for thousands of years." "What problems?"
Species that refuse to communicate with each other.
"Ancient conflicts that no one remembers how to resolve. Technological stagnation caused by excessive caution." Nari smiled. "Humans do not seem to suffer from any of these problems." Hyunwoo phased his entire arm through the laboratory wall, then brought it back through. "We have plenty of other problems, though." "Yes," Nari agreed. "But they are not boring problems." The Kajari invasion fleet arrived 3 days early, catching Earth's defenders in the middle of their final preparations. Hyunwoo was in the command center beneath Seoul when the alarms began sounding, indicating that unknown ships had appeared in Earth's orbit. "How many ships?" Admiral Seok Junam asked, taking command of the unified Earth Defense Force that had been secretly assembled over the past month. 15 large vessels, Captain Wang reported from her monitoring station, and they are not trying to hide their presence. On the main screen, the Kajari fleet was clearly visible against the backdrop of space. The ships were massive, dark, and angular, looking more like floating weapons than vessels meant for exploration or diplomacy. "They are hailing us," the communications officer announced. "Put them through," Admiral Nam ordered. The screen changed to show a tall, reptilian creature with golden scales and cold, calculating eyes. When it spoke, the translation software provided a mechanical voice overlay. "Humans of Earth," the Kajari commander said. "I am war leader Threnks of the Kajari Empire. Your species has been evaluated and found to pose a potential threat to interdimensional stability. You will immediately cease all technological development and submit to Kajari oversight. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your civilization." Admiral Nam stepped forward. "This is Admiral Nam of the Earth Defense Force. We refuse your ultimatum. Earth is under our protection." Threnks made a sound that might have been laughter. "You cannot protect what you cannot hide. Our sensors show that your primitive technology poses no threat to our forces." "Then you have not been paying attention," Admiral Nam replied calmly. Before Threnks could respond, Admiral Nam gave a hand signal. Around the globe, teams of human phase operatives activated the defense grid that had been under construction for weeks. Seoul disappeared. One moment the city was visible on satellite feeds, bustling with millions of people and thousands of buildings. The next moment there was nothing but empty land where the city had been. To outside observers, it looked like Seoul had simply vanished from existence. "What sorcery is this?" Threnks demanded, staring at his tactical displays in confusion. "No sorcery," Admiral Nam said. "Just human ingenuity." Around the world, other major cities began disappearing as well. Tokyo, New York, London, Moscow, Mumbai. One by one, Earth's population centers phased out of normal space, becoming unreachable to the Kajari weapons. "Impossible," Threnks said. "Our intelligence indicates that humans do not possess dimensional manipulation technology." Your intelligence was incomplete, Admiral Nam replied. In the Seoul Command Center, which existed in a phase state along with the rest of the city, Hyunwoo watched the Kajari fleet's confusion with satisfaction. They expected us to fight like other species, he said to Nari, who was monitoring Valari communications channels. The Valari Council is stunned, Nari reported. They did not think humans could master phasing technology this quickly. We did not master their technology, Hyunwoo pointed out. We developed our own approach. That was the key difference. While the Valari had spent thousands of years learning to phase individual bodies, humans had immediately thought bigger. Instead of learning to phase themselves, they had built networks of linked phase generators that could shift entire cities in and out of normal space. It was a completely different approach to the same basic principle. The Kajari tried to attack the phased cities, but their weapons simply passed through empty space. They tried to land ground forces, but there was nothing to land on. Earth's population centers had become untouchable, but Hyunwoo knew this was only the first part of the plan. Phase 2, Admiral Nam announced. Around the globe, human teams that had been hiding in unphased areas began their counterattack. These were the humans who had learned to phase their own bodies, trained in new forms of combat that no alien species had ever encountered. Jinho led one of these teams in a direct assault on a Kajari ship that had landed in the mountains outside Seoul. The human soldiers phased through the ship's hull, appearing inside the vessel where the Kajari had no defenses. Within minutes, they had disabled the ship's weapons and captured its crew. Similar attacks happened simultaneously around the world. Kajari forces trained to fight conventional enemies with predictable tactics found themselves completely unable to cope with human soldiers who could appear anywhere and disappear just as quickly. This is not possible, Thrank said, watching his forces being systematically defeated by enemies they could not predict or contain. No species fights like this. Exactly, Admiral Nam said. That is why you cannot win. Dr. Lee, monitoring the battle from the Seoul Command Center, marveled at what she was seeing. The Kajari are trying to adapt their tactics, but they keep assuming humans will start following predictable patterns. They do not understand that unpredictability is our strategy. It is more than strategy, Nari observed. It is who you are as a species. You do not just think outside conventional boundaries. You do not even see the boundaries that limit other species. The battle continued for 6 hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Kajari were skilled warriors with superior technology, but they were fighting an enemy that broke every rule they understood about warfare. Human tactics shifted constantly, using the Kajari's own predictability against them. When the last Kajari ship surrendered, Thranks requested a meeting with Earth's leaders. We underestimated your species, he admitted when he appeared on the communication screen. We believed you were a primitive civilization that could be easily controlled or eliminated. We get that a lot, Admiral Nam said dryly. The Kajari Empire withdraws its claim over Earth, Thranks continued. You have proven that humanity cannot be subjugated through conventional means. But this does not end our concerns about your rapid technological development. Then perhaps it is time for a different approach, a new voice said. The screen split to show another figure, a tall, elegant being that looked similar to Nari but older and more formally dressed. I am Council Leader Yarix of the Valari, the new figure announced. I am here to formally invite humanity to join the Interdimensional Alliance as a full member species. There was complete silence in the command center for several seconds. That is unexpected, Admiral Nam said carefully. Your species has demonstrated capabilities that we have never seen before, Council Leader Yarix explained. Your ability to innovate under pressure, to cooperate across your entire planet when necessary, and to develop new approaches to problems that other species consider solved. These are valuable traits that the Alliance has been lacking. What would membership involve? Admiral Nam asked. Access to interdimensional technology and knowledge, participation in Alliance governance, and the opportunity to explore other dimensions and meet other species. In exchange, Earth would contribute to Alliance security and problem-solving efforts. Hyunwoo looked at Nari. Is this what you hoped would happen? I hoped your species would survive, Nari said. This is much better than I dared to hope. 6 months later, Earth hosted the first interdimensional university, where humans and aliens studied together and learned from each other. The old dormitory where Hyunwoo and Nari had first met was now part of a much larger complex that included students from dozens of different species. I still cannot believe how quickly humans adapted to interdimensional technology, Nari said as she and Hyunwoo walked across the campus. Most species take decades just to understand the basic principles. We had good teachers, Hyunwoo replied, phasing casually through a tree that was in their path. And proper motivation. The motivation was the key, Nari agreed. Humans do their best work when the stakes are highest. They stopped at their old building and looked up at the window of their former room. Do you think humans will be able to handle being part of a larger galactic community? Nari asked. I think the galactic community had better get ready to handle humans, Hyunwoo said with a smile. As they walked away, Hyunwoo reflected on how much had changed since that first night when he had seen Nari step through a wall. Humanity had gone from being an isolated species to being a key member of an interdimensional alliance. They had proven that being different was not the same as being dangerous. But most importantly, they had shown that sometimes the qualities that make you seem like a threat are exactly the qualities that make you valuable as an ally. What are you thinking about? Nari asked. Just remembering when my biggest worry was whether my strange roommate ever slept, Hyunwoo said. And now I am wondering what impossible thing humans will figure out how to do next. Above them, human and alien students worked together on projects that would have been pure fantasy just a year earlier. Earth's future was no longer limited to one planet or even one dimension. Humanity had found its place in a vast universe, not as conquerors or subjects, but as the species that could find new solutions to old problems. And it had all started with one curious human who could not stop wondering about his alien roommate's strange habits.